Let's take a look here at simplifying fractions. It says here some fractions are equivalent. Equivalent means they're equal to each other. Now, when we're simplifying fractions, we are trying to find the equivalent fraction using the smallest possible numbers in the numerator and denominator. So top and bottom of the fraction, we want to get the numbers as small as possible and have it still be equal or equivalent to the original fraction. Now, before we look at fractions, let's just look at some examples of equivalent expressions using some other operations. So like if we look here, 3 plus 4 is a 7. 2 plus 5 is also a 7. These both equal a 7, so this is equivalent to this. Okay, and look, here's a couple equivalent expressions using subtraction. 11 minus 6 is a 5. 9 minus 4 is also a 5. So these are two equivalent expressions using subtraction. We could do the same thing with multiplication, except that I need to fix this, don't I? This should be a 6. Okay. Pretend you never saw that. That's a 2 times 6. All right, so here we have 3 times 4 is a 12, and here we have 2 times 6, which is also a 12. So these are equivalent expressions using multiplication. Okay, and what comes next is division. And when we have a fraction, that's what we're doing. We're dividing. So now we're looking at fractions and we're dividing. Okay, so the first one, 20 divided by 5, the answer is a 4. 8 divided by 2 is also a 4. So that means these two fractions are equivalent. So if I were to write this out, I could write the fraction 20 over 5 is equal to the fraction 8 over 2. And both of those are equal to 4. And 4 is actually going to be as simplified as we can get. It equals a whole number. So that's the simplified version. Now, when you're working with fractions, the answer is not always a whole number. It could be a decimal value. And that's where we're going to want to look at simplifying a fraction to where our final answer will still be a fraction, but using the smallest possible numbers. Let's take a look at that. So we've got 5 over 10. Now 5 divided by 10, I know right away my answer is not going to be a whole number. Anytime you have a numerator that's smaller than the denominator, that means the answer is less than 1. So this is going to be a number less than 1. It's going to be a decimal. Now you might know the value of this without plugging it into a calculator, but we'll just check these on a calculator. By the way, I'm using Desmos.com as my calculator. So if I do 5 divided by 10, and it gives me the answer right here, 0.5. So this is equal to 0.5. And let's do the other one on Desmos, 6 divided by 12. And look, I get the same decimal value, 0.5. So since this fraction and this one have the same decimal value, 0.5, that means they're equivalent. Now, if I want to simplify this fraction, so if I have 5 over 10, and instead of writing my answer as a decimal, I want to keep it as a fraction, but simplify it. What I have to now do is look for a common factor between the numerator and the denominator, 5 and 10. So this is where you're going to need to know your factors. Factors are numbers that multiply together to give us a 5. So factors of 5, 1 times 5. That's really the only pair of numbers that multiply to make 5, at least whole numbers. And that's what we're looking at here. Factors that are whole numbers. So what whole numbers multiply together to make it 10? Well, it could be 1 times 10. The other possibility is 2 times 5. And now what we're going to do is look for a common factor. That means a number that's up here on this list and also a number that is on this list. Okay, now the number 1 is always going to be on every list because 1 is a factor of every number Okay, but 1 is never going to help us simplify. So I'm not going to use the number 1. Okay, the number 1 is not going to help me. So ignoring the number 1, is there any other number that's on both of these lists? And the answer is yes, there is. It's the 5, right? 5 is here, 5 is here. So 5 is a common factor. Now, by the way, if you find more than one match, so more than one common factor, you're always going to go with the greatest common factor. That means the biggest number. Here, there's only one choice, and it's a 5. So what I have to do now is divide by the common factor. So I'm going to divide my numerator by 5, and I'm going to divide the denominator by 5. Let's see what we get here. 5 divided by 5 is a 1. 10 divided by 5 is a 2. So 1 over 2 is our simplified fraction. And guess what? A way you could check your answer is this fraction should also give me this same decimal value. We can check that with Desmos. Let me just quickly go back to Desmos. Let's try that. 1 divided by 2. Take a look. 1 divided by 2 gives me the same decimal value, 0.5. So I know that that works. Okay, so here's our answer. 5 over 10 simplifies. It gives me 1 over 2. Is the simplified fraction for 5 over 10. Let's do the same thing with 6 over 12. Now, because we already know 6 over 12 gives us the same decimal value, it should also give us this same simplified fraction of 1 over 2, but let's go through the process. So if I have 6 divided by 12, I'm going to look for a greatest common factor, which means I need to list out the factors of 6. 1 times 6, or I could have 2 times 3. Factors of 12 are 1 times 12, or 2 times 6, or 3 times 4. And now we're going to look for a common factor. So between this list and the list down here, are there any matches? Well, let's take a look. Of course, we're going to cross the number 1 off of the list, because we never use 1. 1 doesn't help us simplify. Now, if you notice here, there's multiple matches because 6 is a factor on both the lists. 2 is also a factor on both the lists, and so is 3. So here we actually have 3 common factors. Whenever that's the case, we're always going to go with the greatest common factor. So what's the biggest number of our choices? 2, 3, and 6? 6 is the biggest number. So this is the one we're going to use. 6, which means we need to divide our numerator and our denominator both by 6. And let's see what we get here. So 6 divided by 6 is a 1. 12 divided by 6 is a 2. And take a look, we get the same simplified fraction, 1/2. So 5 over 10, 6 over 12, when we simplify them, they both give us the same simplified fraction of 1 over 2. Let's look at some more examples here. Okay, our first one is 10 over 8. So again, I'm going to look for common factor in the numerator and denominator. So let's see here. Factors of 10 are going to be 1 times 10, or 2 times 5. Factors of 8 are going to be 1 times 8, or 2 times 4. Okay, and we never use 1 to simplify. Do you see any common factors? There's only one. It's a 2. So we're going to use a 2. So let's divide top by 2, divide the bottom by 2. 10 divided by 2 is a 5. 8 divided by 2 is a 4. Okay, this is our answer. Now, a way we can check our answer using a calculator, and again, I'm going to use the Desmos calculator. Let me pull this over here. On one line, I'm going to type my original fraction, 10 over 8. and we see the decimal value is 1.25. Now, when I type in my answer, 5 over 4, I should get the exact same decimal value. 5 over 4, and notice I get the same thing, 1.25. So as long as those match, I know that they're equivalent. And of course, 5 and 4 are smaller numbers than 10 and 8. So that's what we want. This is our fraction in simplified form. Okay, let's take a look at another example here. 18 and 24. So let's find factors of 18. It could be 1 times 18. Could be 2 times 9. Could be 3 times 6. I think that's all of them. Let's look at factors of 24. It could be 1 times 24. 2 times 12. 3 times 8. 4 times 6. Okay, so we got lots of factors here. So again, we're going to look for a common factor between 18 and 24. And 1 we can cross off the list. Now let's see. 2 is a common factor here and here. 3 is a common factor here and here. And 6 is a common factor. So we've got 3 common factors. When you have more than one, we need the greatest common factor. The numbers are 2, 3, and 6. The greatest of those 3 numbers is 6. So we're going to use a 6. That's what we're going to divide our fraction by. So numerator, divide by 6. Denominator, divide by 6. 18 divided by 6 is a 3. 24 divided by 6 is a 4. This is our final answer, fraction in simplified form. We can check our answer on a calculator. Let's do that. So the original fraction, 18 divided by 24. Here's the decimal value, 0.75. Let's check our answer, 3 divided by 4. We get the exact same decimal value, 0.75. So we know we got it right. Okay, I think I have one more example here. Let's look at this one. Okay, 9 divided by 20. So same thing. We're going to look for common factors. So factors of 9 are going to be 1 times 9 or 3 times 3. Factors of 20, 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. Now let's check for a common factor. So a number that's on both of those lists. And remember, 1 is always going to show up, but 1 never helps us simplify, so we cross off the 1. After we cross off the 1, notice that there is no common factor. This is just 9 and 3. There's no 9 and 3 here, so there are no common factors. So what do we do when there's no common factors? You know what that means? That means the fraction is already in simplified form. We can't make 9 over 20 simplified any further than it already is. So we're just going to leave our answer as 9 over 20. That's our answer. Now I've got some examples for you to try. So go ahead, pause the video, give these ones a try. When you're ready to check your answers, you can come back and unpause the video and take a look at the solutions.